Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions. And today we're going to talk about how to grow your business and help more people and the pros and cons of acquiring a practice here with James Casady, who is the president of Platinum Physical Therapy in Massachusetts. And James just acquired another practice and added that to his current Platinum PT brand, which has grown his practice from 4 locations to 6. So in this podcast, James is going to talk about the benefits and the challenges, things that he had to come across in acquiring a new practice. So James, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. So congratulations, first off, on acquiring the recent acquisition here. I think it's Personal Best Physical Therapy. Is that the company that
Correct.
was
Yeah.
acquired?
Yeah.
Great. And so, how did this all transpire? Like, how did you come across this acquisition opportunity?
It was a little bit of a unique, situation experience. I actually knew the former owners really well personally. Chris Titcomb, it was the founder, started that. He worked for me for about 8 years, went and started his own clinics. He's doing an awesome job. Things went well there. And then unfortunately, through some personal tragedy, Chris passed away. His wife took over and ran it the past year. She reached out and asked if I'd be interested in acquiring those clinics. And it kind of went from there. We can get deeper into the story, but initially I did say no because I couldn't. We're going to get into this, but I couldn't figure out how to kind of get that done, make that work with
Gotcha.
our current staffing, with everything like that. But ultimately, we did figure out some great solutions, I think, in how to work that out. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
very, very different situation there, and obviously,
yeah.
things happen, right? I mean, it's life happens, and there's opportunities out there, and there's a lot of acquisitions that are happening in the medical space, right? Especially in the physical therapy space, and uh, I think for me, like when I sold my practice, I really sought out another practice owner to buy
Mhm.
versus like a bigger group, or even private equity, things like that. Just because I had that invested interest in my team and I wanted them to be taken care of, and I knew that it was going to be easier transition to another practice owner. So um, it's very, very interesting that came across that way, but I think it's good for us to look at too that there's just lots of opportunities and things that happen in a practice, right, where the person might need to sell their practice off or transition out or whatever it may be. So, for you, what made you to obviously you had opened 4 locations of your own with
Mhm.
Platinum PT, but then you had this acquisition opportunity. So, what made you to decide to go with acquiring the practice versus opening more locations?
Sure. Yeah. So historically, I opened my first practice all the way back 2004, and had one practice, and I swore up and down, only one ever. I'm not gonna, I'd seen other owners grow and maybe grow too quickly, and I didn't want to follow that path. But we did, we got up to 4 as of last summer, kind of doing more of the de novo type model, just opening up from scratch, so to speak. And they went really well. They were, each one of our growth experiences has come from opportunities though that have come up. Like I said, I'm only gonna ever have one. Great opportunity came up to open a second. So we looked at it and then did it. And the same with the third and the fourth. These were just good opportunities. And so even though I wouldn't say I'm growth averse, I definitely am open to anything that comes up. I will consider all options and any options, even though it wasn't in the plans. And these things just made sense, once you did the stuff. And, similarly now, so the acquisition, again, I would say I had considered it before and was probably nervous and scared to do that. I'd done the de novo, but I was like, just didn't know enough about it. I'd, gone to PPS and done all that, but wasn't really sure. And now
Mhm.
that I've worked through this process, it's like, oh, wow, this is actually extremely doable. And, there were a lot of crossovers to what you said earlier with, the current or this most recent past owner. she did not want their employees to go to a big chain. These were family to her, and to her, former, her past husband.
Mhm.
And so she wanted them taken care of. And so there were, I think in the end, she probably had 4, 5, 6 offers, but she really was, set to go with us because, like you said, she wanted to take care of the employees. She wanted that personal fit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great for us.
That's really interesting to hear, though, your evolution in your practice expansion. And it really comes back to getting over your own hesitations, right? So you have that hesitation. Oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable going to another location. It means something different, different systems, different, having to trust people more to be a manager in that location. And then, you got your feet wet with that. And then it was another location. And then now this acquisition opportunity came up and you still had that, you know, observable hesitation at the beginning, right? But then you're like, okay, I'll go for it, right? So that's also a testament to your your experience and your potential there as a business owner, that you're willing to go for it and take that risk, right? So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. When we, at the end of the day, in pretty much each one of those situations, we had the right staff to do it, to open these de novos. And then ultimately, originally I turned down this acquisition opportunity, but then over the course of time, as I chatted with 1 or 2 of my employees who had been with me for a long time, it was a perfect opportunity for one of them to
mm,
buy into the company, become a part owner, get to run these 2 new clinics, use me as a mentor. Like it just worked out so unbelievably well. It was a win for my employee who now is a part owner. It was a win for Katie, who sold the clinics and could
mhm.
go and do her own thing, what was best for her and her family. And a win for me being able to just grow and help some other people out and do that. So it was really cool.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You said, you had the right staff. And so what was it that about the staff that was right, that allowed you to put them into those new locations to help those run them for you?
Sure. Yeah. In my model, we have a clinic manager at each location, and those people are, of course, integral to our whole model. And I had a clinic manager who, and I would say this of, I guess, all our clinic managers, quite honestly, they have what I have heard people call an owner mentality, where
Mhm.
they really come in, and they're acting as if it's their clinic, and they're making decisions based on that. Their work ethic is based on that. Everything they do is based on that. So I have a great crew of people who have that owner mentality. So then I was very comfortable discussing this opportunity with them. And when the one person said, "Hey, I'd love to do that. I know I can make that work," it just made a lot of sense. So, we know we can provide all of the infrastructure and everything else, knowledge base for her too. So yeah, it went great.
I like that you looked for that therapist that had that owner mentality. It's a great way of putting it. Um, because you don't want to put someone in a position of management when they're maybe not a good manager, right? And they don't really have the right headspace. They just want to clock out,
Right,
at
right.
5 o'clock. So yeah, you got to have the right person, the right mentality, the go-getter that wants to make it happen. And I think it's also a fantastic opportunity to retain great staff when you're able to given those opportunities, right, to take on something more challenging, newer, greater opportunity for them, part ownership. That's even fantastic with that. So, um,
I think, yeah, I would say too, they're, as I think about they're true leaders, so I think I would even differentiate between a manager and a leader. And I think both are valuable, and you need both, or you need a person who maybe has both skill sets. But again, I have a couple of people who have really stepped up as leaders, and they're really, showing again
mhm.
leadership, owner mentality, all those things, however you want to kind of wrap them. But yeah, it's very valuable. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so, was there a way? Did they just jump in there and start going for it, or was there like a training process or something that you had to start doing in your current clinics to help with that?
We've been doing participating in a leadership training course this year. And so I had all my clinic managers going through the course. So that was nice because that gave her a really good taste of kind of how to accomplish things with a lot of employees. That was really helpful. Then she was already managing one of our clinics anyway. And then we just started having very regular meetings. Once we started down this path, it was like, okay, we're going to buy into these two together. We have the six at large that are all platinum. She just bought into those two. She's part owner there, and she'll only ever be in those two, and she's going to make them thrive. And so we just, lots of regular meetings, lots of education. I've been doing this 20 years now, so, again, just basic kind of the how can I help you? What do you
Yeah.
need to know? What do we need to learn? And I have a good idea, of course, of what that is. And she's asking great questions. So, yeah, kind of
But
dove
I
in.
think what you did there too was a real smart thing was that you invested in their training as a leader, and not just letting them go at it. Because I've seen those mistakes happen before in clinics where you think, hey, this person's a super therapist or super producer. Let me put them as a clinic manager in a new location. And they just don't have either the experience or the knowledge of the business side of it, the
Right.
operations side of it, right? And so
Absolutely.
then they and it's not good for them, it's not fair to them either because you're throwing them to the wolves basically.
Yeah.
And they're going to suffer and they're not going to feel good about themselves because they're struggling in that particular
Right.
role.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Great point. Yeah, absolutely.
So you took this step, right? You saw
Mhm.
this opportunity came to you and you said, okay, I'm going to go for it. So can you give us a brief overview of that process that you went through for the acquisition?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. We started out with just, letter of interest, letter of intent, however you want to say it. But, that was this clinic already had some offers on the table. We contacted, their brokers, said, hey, we want to get in the game here. What do you need? Sent that letter, basically that had our offer in it.
Mhm.
And again, this stuff, like I said, I've opened clinics, but never had gone through this process. So it was very interesting that way. And once we put that out there, then, signed the non-disclosure agreement, and then they kind of open up their books to you. So we
Mhm.
were able to go through, their leases, their, payroll registers, staffing, just a pretty deep dive into kind of, in this case, their QuickBooks, but, into all their financials, all their numbers, each individual PT, how many patients are they seeing per year? How many units are they billing at? Getting to see all the KPIs, getting to see everything. And so it was it took a lot of time. It was pretty intensive going through all that data. And again, this was a great learning experience for my
Is
now
that
business partner.
something you did on your own, or did you have like an accountant that helped you in this process?
I had had a valuation of my own company just
Mhm.
because it had been a while and it was recommended to me. So I had, there's a group, the 8150 advisors. I had them do a valuation of my company as it was with the four locations. And that was one of the best educations, I guess I would say I had. I mean, it was amazing what I learned about my own company and what I learned about, just all of the ins and outs of everything and which numbers matter and why and what's looked at. So I was able to take all that knowledge then and apply that directly to this. I had only done that a few months earlier, so it was very fresh in my mind.
Excellent.
And I could really line both clinics up side by side or both companies and look at them and see what I might change or not, things like
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah, so I think whether you're going to sell or whether you're acquiring clinics, you definitely need to have your advisors around you, right?
right.
Like that team, right? It's not just an attorney, right? You need to have definitely the people that have done this quite a bit and have the experience in it.
I think you have to find industry specific experts. Like there's no doubt most accountants, most attorneys, even if they're corporate attorneys and they don't, understand the healthcare world. If we
Yeah,
live in a very messy world, right? Like,
definitely.
and so finding people industry specific. And I leaned on the 8150 group a lot. And then as well as I had joined a peer-to-peer group through PPS,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I've got an amazing group of other owners. We got six of us total. We have monthly meetings. And so I was bouncing stuff off them and telling them, different things and, all sorts of, asking them a lot of questions and got a lot of good feedback from them as well. So it's
Yeah,
helpful.
that's a fantastic resource to be able to ping pong off of other practice owners that may have been in a similar situation, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know going through my own experience of selling my practice, um, I really like what you said about industry specific advisors because it does make a difference. And what I find is that definitely in the physical therapy world, in the practice world, there's a lot of nuances, right? And going through that, I had deals fall through because I did not agree with the terms their attorney was coming back with because they were approaching it from a very different corporate perspective. And it's like that won't apply to what we're doing there. That doesn't make sense, right? So
Yeah.
I totally hear you on having those industry specific advisors. It's definitely worth, the investment there. And so I, I think this is important here for someone who's looking to sell their practice or acquire new practices. You were talking about the data review here and
Mhm.
really looking at the numbers. And would you say at the end of the day, there's some goodwill, there's some things that you take into account with putting together what's that offer, the best offer, but does it really come down to the numbers, right? How well structured those numbers and profit margins and everything are in QuickBooks?
For me, it did a lot, for sure. And again, it might be partially just being my first acquisition, being a little bit of maybe a smaller player, compared. I'm sure the big chains run it differently, right? But it was very important because I didn't want to have to come in and make a bunch of changes. I think it's one thing to look at the numbers and say, yeah, they stink at this, they stink at that, but we'll just change it. We're just going to educate them. We'll get them billing correctly. We're going to do, and that's great, and that can be done. But that's a much heavier lift, right? So if
Yeah.
if their numbers are looking good, and they seem to be doing all the right things, that's a nice thing to see on the paper for sure. It makes it a
Yeah.
much easier leap, I guess, into that. So it was very important to me. Yeah, to see
Yeah.
those numbers looking pretty darn good. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
again, I hear from practice owners that are, we're all going to exit our business at some point in the future, right? Whether it's a year or 10 years or 15 years, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But we always tend to put more effort, or we tend to think that our practice is valued more than it really is when you start to really get into the finance part of it.
Yeah.
And so as a practice owner, in order for you to get the maximum value out of your business, you really have to work the number. You have to know the numbers, right? And the numbers have to make sense to someone else who's going to buy it. And if you are a huge part of that business, you treat a lot of patients, for example, and you're kind of the manager of the clinics, right? Then you take you out of the equation. What is the real value of the business, right?
Yeah.
And so that's definitely you as someone who's acquiring a clinic, you're definitely looking at those things from business mindset of what is this business going to continue to make for itself and for me, and what are the opportunities for the future? But first and foremost, will I take this over and still be profitable?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly you want to look at the potential, and yeah, you see kind of the stuff. Hey, I think I can make a change here. Hey, we can make this more profitable here and there, and it's going to be great. But no, there's no guarantees. You want to make sure, especially at my size, I can't dump a bunch of money into something that's 50-50.
Yeah.
Like there's no way. Like I have a family, I got people I have to take care of. I can't, it's
Right.
all about risk at the end of the day. And
Right.
I tell my employees this all the time when we're negotiating stuff. I'm like, it's just Tuesday. If you're taking on the risk for this thing, then it's worth a lot more. I can pay a lot more if I'm taking the risk, then I pay you less. It's all risk, risk reward stuff. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
So you did the letter of interest, and then you did the data analysis there of the books and everything. And then what was kind of the next steps after you said, okay, this looks like a good opportunity?
We did all that. It looked good. So then we set up some clinic tours, which happened off hours. We went on an evening when no employees are there because unfortunately for the employees, the recommended thing is not to let them know until it's signed, sealed, and a couple of weeks even from delivery.
Mhm.
And some of the employees, were a little upset that they hadn't been told earlier and stuff, but it's just, I mean, we talked to a lot of people and got advice from a lot of people, and everyone said, that you don't want to have them sitting there with this hanging over them. They don't want to
Yeah.
wait 2 months to find out what's going to change and how it's going to change and all that. They're like, just give them about 2 weeks, let them know what's happening, you let them know, and then you roll with it and kind of go. So
Yeah.
anyways, clinic tours, and yeah, just, and then started talks with the owner as far as like, hey, this is what we're thinking. She again, it was important to her that her employees were taken care of. So she wanted to know specifics of, how are you going to do this? What are you going to do about that? We currently do this. Are you going to do this? She had a lot of great questions for, just daily operations. Benefits was a big deal. And, clinic structure, they luckily were on the same model as us. So it's really easy transition for the employees. We do a 1-to-1 40-minute per situation. So they're on the same thing. So that made it pretty straightforward that way.
Yeah.
That handled a lot of stuff there.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, what you did there was really looking at how the, what operations are you going to come in with? And I think that's where, if you're going to go acquire a business, and if the buyer has multiple offers on the table, they kind of choosing who they go with, and it may not even necessarily be the highest offer, right?
Right.
It can be the one that's the best fit, like in your situation, right? So if
Sure.
if you're able to prepare as you're going into that acquisition process to say, hey, here's our plan basically of how we would turn over this operation. And everybody's looking for the least amount of friction as possible, right? As they
Mhm.
go in there. So I think that's a great point that you had, is that you went in with what's the model's going to look like, how are we going to transition certain things. You give comfort to the buyer knowing that there's going to be a transition process after the sale.
Right, right. We have a plan. Like that's really what they want to know. Like, do you have a plan? Like,
Right.
yeah,
and
yeah,
and I going into the what you said about the not not letting people know, right? And we went through the same thing, and when we were selling our practice, that should you tell your employees, right? Because you have to kind of keep a few secrets. You kind of do clinic tours in the evening when no one's there. um you want to, but like you said, the reality is that you don't want to create as much disruption there, right? And
mhm,
it's you create a lot of unknown, right? And in the absence of data, people make it up. So if you're if
right,
you're you're not going to give them a lot of information, they're going to start to think all kinds of thoughts, and you don't want that to happen, right? And I can just tell you from my own experience, deals fall through all the time. So you don't
yeah,
want to tell your team, hey, I'm selling the practice here, we're going to be going with this great group, and then last minute the deal falls through, and you're starting all over again, and they're kind of in limbo, like, hey, what's going to happen here?
Do you want more freedom in your clinic? Then you need to work on your business, not just in it. The top practice owners know that they need a marketing system that consistently attracts patients from the internet. And at Practice Promotions, we've helped hundreds of practice owners skyrocket to the top of Google and get more new patients from online. Go to practicepromotions.net/kit to get our free practice marketing sample kit. It includes all our digital marketing tips and tricks that will get you new patients from Google. That's practicepromotions.net/kit, KIT, for a free marketing kit. And now back to the show.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even it was interesting too, because even with the confidentiality stuff, our current employees also we couldn't share anything with, and they could tell something was afoot. They were so they were, I think, getting a little nervous too and wondering if we were selling and all these things. And
Yeah.
we did at a certain point reassure them and said, hey, we're looking at an expansion opportunity. We just stayed vague on everything. Can't give you details yet. Nothing's changing on our end, but we are looking to grow. And but yeah, it was interesting on all sides of that confidentiality agreement. Different stressors to different people. So
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. And so in this transition point with the new practice, how did it go with that changeover in ownership, right? How did you approach handling the staff in that new facility?
Yeah, so we went in there, like I said, the owner told her employees about 2 weeks before on like a Monday. My partner and I went in there on a Wednesday, then give them a couple days to kind of absorb the information. and introduced ourselves and, told them kind of, again, general stuff, and said, we're going to be meeting with you guys one-on-one with the specifics, wanting to give information, but also not overwhelm them, because as they hear new news and different things, a lot of times you just kind of shut that off. I would do the same thing, right? You hear, oh my gosh, this is happening. What? And then you'd hear nothing else. So trying to share the information, give them, good, gave them our mobile numbers, say call, text anytime with anything, just started sharing information, made ourselves extremely accessible. And then just, yeah, started moving forward. And we're actually only just over a month into this. July 1st was the date, but it's going extremely well. I mean, it's going better than I could have even expected. So we're very happy with the whole thing, how it's gone. It certainly took people a while to get comfortable, and I think they still are. They're not fully, but people are more and more. Each day, each week, they're okay. We're gonna be okay. Okay, this is all right. So. Yeah, they have to experience it before they truly know. So,
yeah, I think it's a good point too, that people like routine, and when you're going to acquire something, you're going to disrupt the routine. Or if you're selling, someone's coming in to acquire you, there's going to be a disruption of routine. But wherever you can keep that, whenever you can set that new routine as quickly as possible and get people, into the groove, they settle down, right, and get to work, right. And if they know that, hey, it's the same kind of philosophy here as what was here before, yeah, then they're happy with that.
Yeah, no one likes change ever. It seems like no one really does, but yeah, it usually turns out okay. So yeah, but it can be scary. It can be scary.
And so for you in the new clinics, like what's your long-term, say, new patient goals, or for the growth of those particular clinics?
Sure. Yeah, so the one location currently has 4 PTs, probably 3.5 technically PTs, and that's based on history in the area and a bunch of stuff. We should be able to get that to 6 pretty comfortably, I think, over the next year, even year and a half, maybe. And then the other clinic had struggled for quite a number of years, and they had some culture issues and some different things, from the people we've interviewed everybody at this point and talked to the other owner. And so with that one, we knew it was going to be a lot more hands-on, a lot deeper dive into it. And again, my business partner spending a majority of her time there to start. But it's just, gosh, it's 3 or 4 just part-time PTs. Some of them work as little as 8 hours a week. It's really, so that I foresee though should be, 3.5 to 4 PTs as well, 1 to 2 years type of a time frame. So
Gotcha.
Growth, staffing, things like that are the goal, and what they should be capable of though is that kind of growth. So
yeah, but it's interesting to hear from your standpoint though, like you knew going into it that one location is going to need a bit more TLC, right?
yeah.
And so, but you as a business owner, you need to have confidence in a team member that can go in and make that happen, so that you're not it, right? And I think that's a smart way that you've looked at doing that, because you could get pulled in more directions. And then if you are doing everything for the current business, that can pull you away from, your attention on the current business, right? If you're having to be pulled in that big direction. But if you have those, like you said, you have those right team players that you could put into those, and you can guide them and mentor them, they're doing the work, right? They're making it happen for you.
Because really, once we hit 4 clinics, or once I hit 4 clinics, I felt a definite shift in my availability, my time. I was starting to get spread pretty thin. I could feel things slipping through the cracks. That's been over this past year. So I'd been trying for years, going to all the conferences, reading book, doing all this stuff, trying to figure out how to incorporate some of my employees, into kind of an ownership model that also looks towards exit strategy. There's so many different boxes it checks, and I just couldn't quite figure it out. That was the interesting thing too with this acquisition. It opened up the pathway to that, because not only did my one employee buy into those 2, I had a second employee buy into all 6. So it really allowed for and now I have this big burden off my shoulders, because I have 2 other people that I can lean on and help me out. It's been a month, but I already feel shockingly like I feel actually way less stressed now with the 6, but because because I could have these two people come on and be, part
Yeah,
owners and help out. So it's been
that's
huge.
awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah, it's part of letting go, right? And
Yeah.
giving ownership. So fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just, but again, it comes back to those. You saw the opportunity and you overcame that hesitation to go. You like, okay, this can be it, right? And you did it, and like you said, it's just opened some different doors for you for the future, right? And that's really cool
Yeah.
to see.
It's really created an opportunity that, I didn't expect. I couldn't have foreseen it. And now, yeah, it's kind of opened my eyes. So I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is really good and
Mhm.
manageable and even allows for more growth. I'm not looking to add any more, but, the right opportunity comes up again. It's like, hey, I know we can do it now. And it's really
Yeah.
not that bad. It's not at all. So it's very doable.
Excellent. And so obviously there's challenges with going through acquisition and figuring new things out. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in doing an acquisition?
Sure. Yeah. A lot of just the very minor processes and logistics of things, even just how are we going to, are we going to keep their logo? Are we going to keep their name? How are we going to, and we're going to keep both their logo and the name, but we're going to kind of merge the companies. How are we going to manage that with our website and with our marketing? There's all these things came up, that was like,
Hmm.
oh, shoot, I didn't think of that. Oh, shoot, now how are we going to do this? Oh, like, there have been just lots and lots and lots of things like that we've had to just they come up and we have to sit down, go through, make a decision, get to, the next thing. And so I would say processes and logistics of things has been everything else wasn't too bad. Like looking at the numbers and seeing, okay, there's a good opportunity, and okay, I know we can do this. I know how my four run. That was all pretty straightforward, quite honestly. But more of yeah, again, like how we got to order new business cards for them. We have to get them name tags. Whose logo is going to be on the name tag? Well, they both don't fit. How, just silly stuff. But
It's
it's
all the
like,
little things, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's all these things. We're like, oh shoot, I don't know. Like, what? I have no idea. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
So lots of just small little things, but probably a million of them. So
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, so I'd love to talk a little bit here about you just mentioned something there, which was when you're acquiring a clinic, you're also buying the name, right? The logo
yeah,
and the brand of that clinic. And so, this is something we deal a lot with at Practice Promotions is there's a lot of acquisitions and mergers that happen is I've seen two different models, right? So one is that the company that acquires over a little bit of time, they do merge into one name, one brand.
mhm,
Um, and there's, there has to be a little bit at the beginning of that overlap, right? And then there's other ways that people acquire, but they keep all of the names of the clinics. And that might be okay for like, two or three clinic names. You can kind of hodgepodge stuff together. We have some clients that have 20 different brands that they're owning and managing, and they're trying to put everything under a central website, and it gets crazy. It gets really crazy, right? So, um, I think that's a really an important thing as people go into acquiring clinics is how are you going to, manage that brand merger, uh,
right.
right?
Yeah, it's again something I was aware of it, but I hadn't put as much thought into it as things started to progress and as we, really things kind of as things accelerated, I guess. Yeah, it became a pretty important, very important. It's amazing. We went into all these one-on-one employee conversations, over the past month. Every single employee is 15, 16 people. Every single person asked if we were keeping the name. That was one of their
Interesting.
major that, and then, that was up there with like PTO and paid holidays. It was really important to all of them that
Yeah,
they really wanted it, which was just a very, yeah, I didn't necessarily expect it. We were planning on keeping the name anyway for
yeah.
many reasons. But I was like, oh wow, like they really want it. Like
It's that
they
routine, right? They want that routine.
rechecked.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah,
said, and we're gonna keep it, right? We're gonna, like they check
yeah.
in about it. So yeah, you got to manage that well. And again, I'm happy to give you a little plug, but truly, like Practice Promotions helped us manage that and get that all situated. Because I was like, hey, here's a whole bunch of stuff. go. Like, what do people do? What do you do? You know, and we had, luckily our team with you guys was like, oh yeah, no, here's some different ways. Here's some examples. They sent us, you know, all these options, and they were like this, and here's consider that. You know, they took us and walked us through it. So that was enormous. Like that was a huge help too, to have that off. Just like knowing I can just kind of hand that off, you know, and then just kind of, okay, yeah, that looks good. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Big deal.
that I'm glad we could help with that. Like I said,
Yeah.
we've been through a lot with lots of different clients who do
Mhm.
that acquisition process, and I do think long term it makes sense to incorporate into one brand, right? Because there's a
Mhm.
lot of power in one brand, and if you're a consumer, um, and you might go to say a website and there's like all these different brands under there, you're kind of a little confused on that. And
Yeah.
I think what happens, what I've seen is that um, a buyer or a seller puts a lot of equity in their brand, right, in their logo. And the reality is that the consumer, they're used to change. They're used to seeing all of this in the market space. Banks change names all the time, so that they're used to name changes a lot in today's
Right.
world.
Right.
And so you want, like I said, you want to have that overlap where you keep the name for a while, the brand, but then over time it merges into the main brand name. And so it doesn't take very long, maybe like 3, 4 months for people to get accustomed to that new brand name for the facility. Right?
Yeah, it's well, and similarly too, you know, my initial thought was like, oh yeah, we'll just keep it, no problem. And then people, you know, patients from those two clinics started getting text reminders about their appointments from Platinum Physical Therapy, you know,
Wow.
not, and so they're, what is this, spam? What is this? No, I go to Personal Best. So there've been a lot of things like that where I was like, oh shoot, like how do we maintain? Because I really want to maintain certain aspects of it, and I do want to maintain kind of a brand and logo of theirs, but there's things that have to change because the way we operate and the efficiencies and that we get, you know, with scaling, certain things have to be Platinum Physical Therapy. And how can we maintain that kind of Personal Best branding that all the people who live in those communities know well, but kind of make it a platinum thing too. So we're still navigating that a little bit. And I think to your point, certainly anything even any bigger, you have to just become one. And we'll see what happens over time. You know, we have no plans to change it this next year or so, but certain things have already had to change. That said, the sign on the building can stay the same, no problem, you know. So
Yeah.
we're navigating that as we
Yeah.
speak.
There's some work, there's some cost to obviously
Sure.
well, kind of rebranding one clinic, right, over time. But like I said, when you do the acquisition, it's good to kind of keep things stable as is for a while, and then over time, merge together into one main brand, right? That gives you a lot of brand power. So, um, so James, here in going through this acquisition process, is there any like broad advice you have for other practice owners who are thinking about acquiring another practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think based on my experience, I would say quite honestly, it's very doable. It's not as scary as it may seem, really. It was extremely smooth, and I think we did have all the right pieces in place with our different advising groups, with you guys, with my peer-to-peer group. I mean, I had, you know, a whole team at the end of the day, and then with my key employees too. But it's very doable. It can flow really nicely, and
Mhm.
you know, for people looking for growth, I think there's no reason not. I think a lot of, I say this from personal experience and other owners that I know well, I think a lot of times the kind of the quote unquote smaller guys, you know, let's say you've got 2, 3, 4 clinics, you know, 1 to 4 clinics, you think, oh, that's something the chains do. Oh, that's something, you know, oh, mergers and acquisitions, the chains do that. Oh, the big guys do that, this and that. And definitely doesn't need to be that way at all. You know, we can do the same stuff and sometimes do it probably better and maybe more well liked by certain other parties involved and things like that. So, yeah, I guess I would say to the smaller business owners to just go for it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some pros and cons there, right? Between if you open a brand new location yourself and build out space and you do all of that stuff, right? And you got to lift it off the ground in that area versus something that's already established. You go in, it should be paying for itself over so many years, right? But like
Yeah,
if you look at it, those because you've done both, right? You've opened new
yeah.
clinic locations for yourself. You've also acquired. So in your mind, like which direction do you think is better?
That's really tough because I mean with the de novos, it's hard starting from scratch. It's hard building a patient base from scratch if you're in a brand new town, location, community. That said, all the other things are already set. You already have your business cards, logo, branding, website, your marketing plans, corporate structure, even. It's all there. And it's really easy to lean on. I mean, it's just, it's easier. So the challenge of starting from scratch, lessens with that stuff. It's still, though, starting from scratch, and you have to have the right people again. And then, but it's interesting though, acquiring these two clinics and having already an established caseload and established cash flow and some of those things has been really nice. I would, if I had to pick, oh, hold on one second, sorry about.
First story.
So yeah, I think right now, if you pinned me down and made me choose between the two, I would probably say the acquisition. I don't know. That's my most recent experience, but I liked how that went a lot. Like the de novo again has its challenges, has some pros, some cons. Yeah, the acquisition for that right fit, I think can be great. I think it's a great opportunity. I've been extremely happy. It's early, but the process was great, and thus far it's been going really well. So I guess if
Yeah.
you made me pick, I would choose that actually, which I'm surprised to even hear myself say.
Well, I mean, there's a reason there's just so many acquisitions happening in the market, right? Because,
Yeah,
like you said, things are already established. You can walk into something that, if it's set up right and easy to turn over. If it's a dumpster fire, then it's going to be a hard go, right?
right, right,
It depends on what you're buying, right? And the situation. And I think there's cases for each. Like, when is the right time to open a new location in a new area? Can you
right,
staff it yourself? Like, what's the amount of effort to get that off the ground versus something that's already established? And you're probably going to pay a little bit more for something that is running fairly well versus
right.
something that's a dumpster fire, right? But sometimes it's worth
Yeah.
that extra money.
I mean, given the current staffing challenges too, it's so hard to find PTs. I mean, getting a place that's already staffed up, that's not a bad thing. Because if you open
Yeah,
that new one, you've got to go find them, and it's hard right now.
yeah, definitely. And so, James, we've been working together for a while here, helping Platinum PT with its marketing. I'm just curious, from your perspective, how's your experience been working with Practice Promotions these years?
Absolutely. It's been fantastic. Yeah, I mean, like, when I signed up with you guys, I'll be very honest, I signed up and I was like, I'm going to do this for a couple months. It's not going to work and I'll just cancel it, and that's fine. But I should at least try it. I had a few people tell me that it's worth looking into. So I was like, I'll try this out. I had never really paid for any kind of marketing before. I had run my practices for 20 years. We were word of mouth. Yeah, I would swear up and down, have conversations with other owners. Oh, we're word of mouth. We don't have to pay. Your marketing budget's how big? That's ridiculous. All this stuff. And I mean, we flipped on the services, and it's been shocking to me, the amount of business that we get from the marketing, through the website referrals, through everything. Some of the Google ads they help us with. I mean, I've been very shocked, and I don't know, I'm like, hi, maybe I'm just a dinosaur at this point and didn't understand the technology. But it's been fantastic. I mean, we have grown so much. I wish I had exact numbers for you, but I would say, when we hired you guys on, we had 3 locations, and we probably had a total of 11, or no, we must have had 12 or 13 PTs. And within a year of hiring you guys on, we jumped up. We were probably 18 or 19 PTs for those 3 locations. And now, yeah, I mean, now we've got 6 locations, and we got, it continues. But I'll be, again, very honest. When I was in the process of acquiring these 2 clinics, I had in the back of my mind, I can't wait to do this, purely because once we bring Practice Promotions into these 2 new clinics, I know the numbers are going to explode. I've seen it. And so they don't have it right now. And so I already know what I'm buying is going to be worth X amount more pretty darn quickly, just adding that. So, I mean, Yeah, it's been awesome. I tracked you down at one of the conferences one time. You didn't have a clue, I don't think, who I was, but I came up to you, you were at a table, standing there, and I told you just your team. Because again, gosh, I spoke to you at one conference and then now today, but your team, the people you were hiring, and I think I asked you at that point too, like, hey, what's your hiring process? How are you training these people? Because your team is phenomenal. And we've had one or two people rotate in and out, and they've all been just fantastic. So I could go on and on, but truly, like, it's been awesome. My peer-to-peer group, I've been telling them, a couple of them have jumped on board now too and stuff, which is great. But yeah, it's our business has grown with it. We've hired on PTs because of it. And it's just nice to not have to like think that much because your team is running the show. So it's great.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel really good to hear your success and see your growth. And
Yeah.
that's phenomenal, from like 13 to 18 providers there in a year. And
Yeah.
you got the secret sauce now for your new business there. So
I
we'll
know.
get that up and running and get you the your return on investment in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is a key thing there for acquisitions, right? And expanding your business. If you're going to have new locations, do you have the marketing systems in place that are going to
Right.
make that new venture successful, right? And you have confidence already knowing that that's worked for you in your current business, and so you can apply that to the new business. So it could be found online. We can draw people in through Google. We know that the websites are going to be much better at converting people as they come in. We're going to have mechanisms for reaching out to that patient base that you bought, right? Because that's a big part of the purchase
Yeah.
price is really the customer list, right? The patient list. So
Right.
you better be marketing very heavily to that list, because that's a great way to get people back in and for treatments. So yeah, you got all those key systems in place. That's the way to really make things take off.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, that was a hesitation, not knowing those two markets. One's 45 minutes, one's an hour away, which is again, I didn't want to be driving there every week. I didn't want all those things. But then the marketing side of it, not knowing those communities, not knowing any doctors down there, any people down there, it just was a nice peace of mind to be like, hey, we're just going to have practice promotions run. I know X, Y, and Z are going to be totally taken care of. And
Mhm.
so now it's a lot, we don't have to do as much.
Yeah, that's one of the things. If you're expanding a business, right? If you're opening a different location, or if you're going in and acquiring another couple locations there, if you have been a business that's heavily reliant on word of mouth referrals and physician referrals, it's going to be difficult to scale into new markets, because it takes a lot of time to build the reputation in that area, to get to know the doctors in that area and build enough reputation. Whereas you still need to do that. But if you have the online marketing mechanisms in place, you can go into that market very quickly,
Yeah.
right? And you can scale up very quickly to make those clinics profitable, because you only have so much runtime in those new locations, right?
Right.
You're paying for staff, you're paying for the facility, electricity, all those kind of things, right? You have your fixed costs, and you need to get the revenue up as fast as possible in those locations to make them profitable. And you only
Right.
have so much runtime for that. So if you're based on an older marketing model of just relationship building through physicians and patients, you can't scale fast enough to have that profit, that return on investment quickly enough. And so you'll see that where locations, they don't take off, and they always end up being the problem location for the practice, because, oh, that one's always underperforming, blah blah blah, right? And it's just because they really may not have a good online marketing um, system in place to just consistently bring people in and grow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Well, James, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today and to share your knowledge on the acquisition process. And congratulations on your success and your expansion. It's wonderful to hear. That's exactly what I want to help clinic owners do, is expand like you have, and you've
Mhm.
really done a great job with that. So thanks for sharing that with us here today. Um, and to our audience out there, don't forget to follow us on our podcast here, subscribe to us on different social media channels, and you'll get lots of great tips and advice that way. And just again, Neil Trickett here from Practice Promotions, wishing you much success in your practice.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Marketing Podcast. Don't forget to get your free practice marketing sample kit at practicepromotions.net/kit. Start 2024 off the right way by building marketing systems that automatically attract new patients from online. That's practicepromotions.net/kit.